Chapter 9 The Trifecta of Motion. Words of Megan Wolfer. Two of the biggest things people know about my dad is his good attitude and his sense of humor. Throughout many years with SCA, he has not once complained. As hard as times could get for him, he has always kept a smile on his face. He is constantly making jokes, and he never lets his disease get in the way of enjoying life. I'm always surprised at how quickly he can turn a bad situation around with just one simple joke. Always standing there lost in thought, and he will quietly lean over and mutter a very sarcastic remark under his breath. They always catch me off guard, which makes them even funnier. We both can't help but to laugh out loud. His laugh is one of those types that can cheer anybody up. Once he gets going, there is no stopping him, which then in turn gets everyone else in the room laughing too. And now Chapter 9. Dancing has always been an activity that I have tried to avoid. Unfortunately, I haven't always been able or been successful in avoiding this. And there were some occasions during the days of my youth when I did indeed find myself immersed in several very awkward situations. These, much to my horror, were events that required a certain amount of rhythmic swaying. To see that I possessed the skills that were worthy of being showcased on American Bandstand or Dance Fever, and I am now putting myself in an age category here. That would be like saying that if Elvis were alive today, he would most certainly be dead by now. I know it's a statement that doesn't make any sense, but trust me, if you had the terrible misfortune of seeing me attempt to cut a rug, then you would also possess a very complete understanding of the comparison. I mean, terrible, shoot, might not even be a strong enough word to define the kind of misfortune one would experience seeing me shake it up. Oh, there would be misfortune. There would be plenty of misfortune. I'm just having trouble coming up with a very descriptive word that would adequately describe the depths of that particular misfortune. So anyway, as a teenager, I remember being in a local 21 and over or younger dance club, and at any given time it seemed like there were at least 25 to 100 of us kids on the dance floor, all moving to loud music that was being pumped out at maximum volume from every conceivable angle. During the rare times that I found myself in the center of the moving, gyrating mass, I felt oddly conflicted. I hadn't necessarily wanted to be there, and yet at the same time, I felt a small sense of belonging, like I'd found a place in life. Mostly though, it was more of an impression that I was now a part of, and a very contributor to one just big, massive, misfortunate collective. My dance floor education started way back in first grade, 45 years ago. The integration towards a life of this kind of musical expression began as a very subtle thing, and by the third grade, we all, meaning my influential 9 and 10-year-old peer group, we all started to feel the yearnings to be cool like our older siblings. I was one of the third graders that had the oldest brothers, both of those brothers being in 7th grade, where life was perceived to hold all the fun dances and the answers to the mysteries of other cool stuff. Well, in our sweet and yet slightly pathetic way, we attempted to stage our dance parties. These raves, as it were, usually tend to land in closer proximity to the play dates that our mothers were still arranging for us at one another's houses or at a local park. Well, when we were old enough to begin to have our own parties with dances, we realized that we had inadvertently actually chosen a more awkward way to socially interact than we'd first realized. I guess that in our young boyhood minds, we thought that maybe all we'd have to do was just set the whole thing up by providing the place and the opportunity. At that point, our job was done, and the girls would know exactly what to do, and they would just kind of simply take over. And just like that, spontaneous dance would break out. But apparently, the girls were thinking the same thing about us boys because all that we ended up doing was sitting around and staring at each other. I, for one, had thought that from the sidelines, the dancing had looked very desirable, like everyone was really enjoying themselves and having lots of fun. It didn't help anything to possess the dance skills that had a closer resemblance to a flight of someone who's trying to avoid a kamikaze yellow jacket or had just walked through a spider web. The opinion that I held at this point changed, and dancing became an activity that was to be avoided at all costs. Well, except for the few times that I went as a teenager because of alternative motives, which would be girls. From that point and moving forward through the years, this was the way that I continued to live, mostly void of even the smallest evidence of dancing. That is until I reached the age of 38 and a diagnosis of ataxia was delivered. At this point, dancing re-entered my life with a vengeance. This time, however, my life was not going to be about occasionally attending any organized dance parties or clubs. Oh no, it was going to be about a life of constant motion, and not always one that is set to music. Spinocerebellar is a disease that causes my condition of ataxia. Within this condition, there's where I find a need to remain constantly aware of the possibility that at any moment my body might find itself in a situation that requires some form of dance movement. So at times, this may manifest itself in short little jerks and twitches, kind of like the robot dance. At other times, it will be in long, sweeping motions, as in ballroom dancing. Occasionally, in moments of shock or surprise, I will shoot straight up on my tippy toes and walk in small steps, like a ballet dancer. I will never know which dance is required until the moment arrives. I will also never know in what situations I might find the need to dance. One of the recurrent situations that I find myself in, and one in which will continually be thrown off guard because I seem to always forget that there might be a need to dance, lies in the public restroom. When I was younger and swearing off the desire to ever dance again, I did not see a day coming when I would have ataxia, and at the same moment be required to move rhythmically in front of a paper towel dispenser in the public restroom. I mean, after waving my hands frantically for 15 to 20 minutes, the only thing that I really need the sheet of paper for when it finally dispensed is to mop the sweat off my forehead. In retrospect, I think that people that made the motion-activated paper towel dispensers expected this to happen and went into partnership with the people who designed and built the bathroom. They convinced those people that it was entirely necessary to mount speakers in the ceiling so that music could, therefore, be continually pumped into the bathroom, making it easier for someone to use their dispensers. I believe that this is why there's a mirror located right above the sink. During the life that I had before SCA, I thought that the mirror in the bathroom was placed in this position so that you could comb your hair or attend to other such areas of dress or hygiene. I mean, a mirror is useful for all these functions, but the primary focus of the mirror in the public restroom is so that you can check out your dance moves. I mean, who wouldn't want to watch themselves while they were jumping around in an attempt to activate the guardian or the keeper of the paper towels? It might even prove to provide you with helpful knowledge for your future bathroom dancing moves. I don't know who invented the hand dryer, but it has replaced by machines which still require a certain amount of hand waving. The motion activated paper towel vending machines can still and quite often be found in public restrooms everywhere. I guess the thing that I find to be the most challenging with this type of one-ply paper towel dispensary system is never being quite sure of the most efficient way needed in which to wave my hands, because it would seem that any definitive pattern of movement will not work twice, even if it is repeated instantly and in the very same manner. Did this type of dispenser get manufactured with a digital chip inside, one that provides a high level of decryption? Did the creators of this system think that all I would need is just one towel? I mean, is that why I can never get more than one to come out? I mean, could the use of 2 or 3 sheets in some way be viewed as wasteful? And I believe that getting the first one out to roll out of the machine was hard enough. Usually, any attempt I make to dispense or go beyond more than just one towel ends in the agony of defeat. It is a whole routine that I have to go through, and I will need to include several types or styles of hand waving. I usually start off with the slow back and forth motion of the hand, like I'm waving at a crowd from a parade float. When this action fails to produce the desired effect, I will increase the speed. So now there are several stages of speed that I increase to, beginning with the overhead gesture, which bears a close resemblance to signaling a plane for landing. I then continue to move through various styles until I arrive at the final stage. This is the one that has become to be known as the SOS, because of the appearance of looking like I am trying frantically to signal a ship from the beach of a deserted island. And this stage also includes some erratic attempts at jumping, whereupon, again, the piped-in music becomes very helpful. All that is missing during this particular hand-waving style is a large signal fire. Alas, most public establishments have a thing about large bathroom fires. Every once in a while, I will enter a bathroom that holds what I refer to as the trifecta of activation. Not just the towel dispenser, but the faucet and the heavily armored soap bottle will also be activated by motion. Washing my hands becomes an exercise in timing and coordination, beginning with the dispensing of the hand soap. I'll start the process off by slowly sliding my hand back and forth underneath the soap nozzle. Well, if I have done the procedure correctly, and I'm standing on one foot, and it happens to be the third Tuesday in the month, I am rewarded by having a 2-gram puddle of soap squirted into my palm. I quickly rub my hands together, and the next trick is to get the water to flow before the thin layer of soap on my hands begins to evaporate, and so I quickly start to move my hand underneath the activated faucet. Once I have gotten the water to flow, I have approximately 2 or 3 seconds to accomplish the task of rinsing off my hands. I then move on to the drying phase of the operation. And this is the whole ordeal wasn't already enough of a trial. I think that at this point, in which the dispenser begins to mock my feeble attempts, it just hangs there, utterly expressionless, appearing to be entirely unconcerned and completely oblivious of my wet-handed predicament. I wave my hands, I bob my arms, I fan, I weave. I'm executing moves that would rival Saturday Night Fever, Dirty Dancing, and Footloose. I'm a maniac on the floor, and I dance like I've never danced before. But then I stumble because of my SCA and a host of issues with balance, and suddenly, eureka! Within the stumbling, I had discovered the secret locking code. The dispenser has now responded to my near fall to the floor and has put forth a paper towel. Thinking that I finally found the exact launch sequence to activate the prized piece of thin paper, I repeat the pattern as quickly as I can. But apparently, the dispenser has now recognized that someone has cracked the code and that I had to give up one of its precious cargo. The discovery will cause it to adjust quickly, and the same motion will no longer work. A new activation code is now needed. By this time, I've usually given up, and I finished drying what now has become mostly dry hands because of all the waving on my pant legs. I then make my exit of the facilities and vow to myself to not use the restroom again until I can do so at home, where I have access to a hand towel that is passively waiting for me on the counter. This whole ordeal will of course end entirely different if at any point in my efforts to make the right hand gestures, I would just so happen to peer through the tinted plastic cover of the paper towel machine, and I would discover that the paper towel dispenser was empty this entire time, and it didn't even say anything. It didn't alert me with a series of flashing lights and beeps. Now, I have never been to a public restroom that provides a constant attendant. I know they exist because I have seen them in the movies and on television. I can only imagine that this sort of vigilance is provided so that this type of thing doesn't ever happen. I can only imagine that at some point someone probably, I'm guessing, got very agitated after having wasted precious moments waving their hands, moments that could have been spent out in the dining room berating a waiter or sending their food back. They made the discovery that the dispenser had been empty the entire time. This kind of thing should never happen, and I'm sure that future prevention against such reoccurrence of this sort of frustrating situations is the primary function of the restroom butler. Well, most likely this, and to provide another perspective and critique of the patron's paper towel dispenser moves. I'm only guessing, of course.